We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today was day number 1 of mandatory minicamp. And when you know it's day 1, everyone's back in the building for the first time, or at least everyone's back in the building, or most people are back in the building. And everyone talks to the media. Kyle Shanahan got some Christian McCaffrey breaking news. Brandon Aiyuk, was he there? Was he not? A whole slew of updates coming your way today, but none of them are as important as the one you may have got a glimpse of in the reflection of the camera, and that is ding, 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 I'm married. Who cares about that, though? Let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers. Yes, the wedding was wonderful. Moved into our brand new house down here in Southern California, but there was a lot happening in NorCal today at Levi's Stadium. So thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And without further ado, let's dive into day number 1 of San Francisco 49ers mandatory minicamp. And let's start with some housekeeping. The first thing is, we got updates on Cameron Latu, last year's 3rd round pick tight end out of Alabama, who I believe tore his ACL last year, didn't play a single snap in the regular season. Kyle Shanahan said today he is expected to be back for the start of training camp in July, so good news for the second-year tight end. But according to ESPN's Nick Wagoner, the following players were at camp but were working on the sidelines today, not participating in team drills. Obviously, Cam Latu being the clear-cut one of the group. Malik Collins, Drake Jackson recovering from an injury, Jordan Elliott, George Kittle, Jacob Cowing, who has kind of had this stop and start beginning to his Niner tenure, did not practice today. John Feliciano, Fred Warner, Talanoa Hufanga recovering from the ACL injury as well, and Charvarius Mooney Ward was there, but did not participate in team drills. Trent Williams was absent due to his daughter's graduation. First off, congratulations to your daughter, Trent Williams. And the other person, Brandon Aiyuk, was not in attendance for mandatory camp because of ongoing contract negotiations. So, everybody almost there, all but 2 people not at mandatory camp day 1, one of them being excused. The other one, Brandon Aiyuk, subject to fines as he is not excused from missing training camp, or minicamp, excuse me. But I do want to dive into Mooney Ward for a second because we did get a lot of news. Juwan Jennings signed last week. I believe it was last Thursday, if that's correct. Christian McCaffrey signs an extension today. Aiyuk wants to get signed, and many other players in the next year or so are going to need to be re-signed. One of them being Charvarius Mooney Ward. He was asked about his contract today and his media availability, and he said, "I'm just going to do my job. Go out there and ball. Put the pressure on the Niners, and hopefully they give me the bag. If they don't, it won't be any bad blood between me or them. It's just like a business decision, but I'm pretty sure they would like to have me, and I'd like to stay here." So the door of communication has been opened up between Mooney Ward and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, no offers have been made, but Mooney Ward has openly now said to the media, "I want to stay here." Now, he obviously also added that if I have to leave, I have to leave. It's no harm, no foul. I get it. It's business, but again, clear as day, saying, hey, I would like to stay with the San Francisco 49ers, and you have to understand why. We win here. He's been hyper successful in San Francisco, clear-cut CB1, but knowing there are plenty of other negotiations that have to take place, and many that already have taken place, there's going to have to be some tough conversations to be had, which could lead Mooney Ward to be out the door, but he wants to stay. Hopefully he is one they can retain. I am someone who was advocating for San Francisco to re-sign him this year to lower his cap hit, to give them more flexibility, not just this year, but in the future seasons as well, because he has a handful of void years on his contract. You re-sign him, get rid of the void years, extend him, get his cap hit down this year, and San Francisco's already kind of done that twice with Juwan Jennings. And our first true topic of today's show, that being Christian McCaffrey. This morning, I believe around 10:30-ish Pacific Coast time, Pacific Standard Time, the San Francisco 49ers and running back Christian McCaffrey agreed to a 2-year, $38 million extension, $19 million a year, that will keep him with the team till 2027 per Adam Schefter. Again, CMC gets $19 million annually, including $24 million in guarantees, and in return, San Francisco has freed up $7.4 million in cap space this season, and after CMC's re-signing an extension, Juwan Jennings' extension, the Niners now have over $32 million in cap space. So now all they have to re-sign is Brandon Aiyuk, and the band is back together for at least one more run. And the way they're building this, and it's so smart because they were able to knock off not just cap this year, but cap every single year of the remaining time of Christian McCaffrey's contract. They're going to save money by paying Christian McCaffrey more money in a sense. It sounds crazy, but it's a savvy business move, well, yes, to help the team now and to give McCaffrey some more, I guess you can say, peace of mind of his future. It also helps San Francisco today free up money and also free up money tomorrow to eventually extend Lenore, maybe Mooney Ward, but especially Brock Purdy. So a great move by the San Francisco 49ers. And look, Christian McCaffrey's contract is now 4 years, $62 million through 2027, which is the richest contract for a running back in NFL history, surpassing, well, Christian McCaffrey's previous record-breaking contracts. But it's funny because whenever a move like this is made, a move that really wasn't necessary, like McCaffrey's under contract this year, this move didn't have to be made. It could have been reworked and retweaked, which is basically what this is, but this move wasn't, on the front, on the hot stove saying, hey, it's boiling over, it's reaching its point of he's going to hold out internally. McCaffrey obviously asked for a raise, and it's funny because this was kind of talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago, maybe last week with Mike Silver. He was kind of hinting towards when the Raiders reworked and kind of, paid Max Crosby more. He's like, hey, San Francisco should do the same thing with Christian McCaffrey. And many fans were like, what are you talking about? This, that, and the other. And some took it to a point of like, he's asking for a trade. He wasn't. But it all comes back to Kyle Shanahan's media availability during the first few days of OTAs, where he openly said, oh, Christian McCaffrey's not here. I'm not worried about it. There was never any worry of we're not going to get McCaffrey back in the building. I can almost guarantee you, if a deal wasn't done with CMC today, it would have been done tomorrow. And if it wasn't done tomorrow, it would have been done on Thursday. That's how important he is to this team. And look, he's the reigning offensive player of the year and arguably the greatest, one of the greatest rushing schemes of all time, at least not the last 25, 24 years in the NFL. Like, McCaffrey means everything to this team, and this team needs McCaffrey. This was simply, You know you need me. I don't need you. Like, Christian McCaffrey can be great anywhere. Yes, San Francisco can be good without Christian McCaffrey, but they're never going to be as good without McCaffrey as they are with McCaffrey, right? He is an offensive player of the year, arguably, if not the best. I mean, I don't know how you can even argue it, but he is the best running back in football. He's one of one. Derrick Henry's great. Others have their place in the conversation, and maybe they're better at this and that, but there is no other Christian McCaffrey, which then sparked the conversation of, is he underpaid still? Now, if I told you that Christian McCaffrey, again, is getting 4 years, $62 million, right? And he got $19 million over the course of like the last 2 years of his deal. Is he underpaid? And the reason why that's coming about is because the receiver market has exploded to Justin Jefferson's $35 million per year contract, and 21 receivers are earning $20 million or more annually. So, look, it's like playing football and baseball, playing basketball and playing football. There are bench players, like Jordan Poole is making as much as Justin Jefferson. I think me and you can agree. For as good as Jordan Poole is, he ain't no Justin Jefferson of the NBA, right? Justin Jefferson's a top 10 player and maybe even has an argument for top 5. He is the best receiver in the entire league when healthy, and it's clear head and shoulders above everybody else. That's Christian McCaffrey. But the issue is that you're playing different positions. Jordan Poole's case, playing a different sport. Those sports are going to value different players, in different brackets and tiers. Whereas in the NFL, they're going to value different positions. Closers in the MLB don't get starting money. Catchers don't get shortstop money. It's how it's always been, how it always will be. And there's an off chance, a Buster Posey-like catcher comes up, a Yadier Molina, Joe Mauer comes out, and you're like, wow, they deserve to have shortstop level money. But even then, there's going to be teams that won't pay up for it. And in Christian McCaffrey's case, you're the highest paid running back for a reason. You're given the money you have been for a reason because you're worth every single penny and more, and yet you're still not making $20 million a year. Whereas, again, are there really 21 other players better than Christian McCaffrey in the NFL? The NFLPA disagrees. The fans disagree. In fact, when you're the offensive player of the year, well, you can argue he is better than all of the receivers making $21 or $20 million a year. That said, he plays running back. They're going to keep you in that realm. And look, I think this deal is kind of a great balance of, the Niners doing good by a great player. And they always do this, right? They make sure to go out of their way with, I think it was Sherman in 2019, where he didn't reach the incentive total he needed to, but they paid him anyways. The same thing goes for Christian McCaffrey here. They didn't have to pay you. They didn't have to be fickle and whatnot, but look, they said, look, you're so good. You're the offensive player of the year. Since you got to San Francisco, you've played 22 total games. You've had over 2,700 rushing yards, over 1,200 receiving yards, and darn near 40 total touchdowns during your time here. You've had almost 4,000 total yards in 22 games. They had to pay Christian McCaffrey in regards to, we can't let you get disgruntled and hold out. The offense needs you. But on paper, you're under contract. You have money. They didn't have to pay him. This was them saying, we value you so much, we're going to prioritize you over Brandon Aiyuk, who they're going to pay as well. Don't mix words. They're going to pay Aiyuk as well. That's just what they do. But the reality of the situation is, all this was like, we'll pay you money, and it's also going to help us down the road too. We're going to recognize your value and make you the highest paid running back in NFL history, but also kick that can down the road. Keep our window open. Now, within that conversation, you have to ask, is there a risk? Is there a risk in re-signing or extending Christian McCaffrey's contract, as he will be 31 by the time his contract is over with? Now, we talked a lot about when the Niners traded for McCaffrey, and my only hesitation with the move, which thankfully we were smart about it during that show 2 years ago, that look, if he's healthy, there is nobody else like Christian McCaffrey in the NFL. He is one of one. He's a clear-cut RB1 on some teams. He'd probably be your receiver number 3, if not your receiver number 1. He's that important. He can make a bad Carolina Panthers team, like he was on, win 7 to 9 games. That's how good he is as a player. But when you get older, Father Time is undefeated, albeit some players like Tom Brady and LeBron James and others can push Father Time down the road. McCaffrey has, he's second in the NFL the last 2 years in carries, and he's had 2 lengthy postseason runs. One of those games, he didn't have a quarterback, so he had to be the guy. So there is some hesitation in regards to you're paying a guy so much money late into his contract, which helps you now, certainly. But once he becomes 29 and 30 and 31, do you regret it? I don't think they will if they win. And I don't think they will if he's really good for a couple of years and isn't the reason why they lose, which it's Christian McCaffrey. He shouldn't be. But any running back after the age of 29, you do start to ask questions of how much longer do you have? Now, thankfully, I can't predict the future. If I was, we'd have 4 of the next 5 Super Bowl rings, right? But I think for McCaffrey's sake, the way he takes care of himself, because again, there was serious concerns. The injuries for McCaffrey began in 2020 during the COVID year, carried over into 2021, and now that that's kind of in our past as a country and as the NFL, you can tell he's taking care of himself better. He's finally got into his regimen again, and he hasn't missed a single game. So there really isn't, outside of the age thing, there really isn't any reason to worry of, is McCaffrey not going to play on Sunday, Monday, or Thursday? I think the question would just be, do you have 3-4 more years of 250 plus carries and 300 touches? That would be my concern. Now, again, that's why you have Elijah Mitchell and you draft Isaac Guerendo and you bring in Jacob Cowling and Pearsall and you do things to eventually alleviate, while not, stop utilizing McCaffrey to his full lengths, but you alleviate some of the touches, some of the pressure, and you allow him to take rests here or there to keep him fresh for longer and longer and longer. So are there concerns? Certainly. But for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who leads all running backs with nearly 400 plus rushing yards over expected since 2022 and has scored 34 touchdowns from scrimmage since 2022, which is 8 more than any other running back, I don't think there really is too much to be concerned about of, is he not going to be productive in 2 or 3 years' time? And look, McCaffrey is so versatile that if the legs are slower, if he's getting older, he doesn't have to play running back for you. Now, you want him to. That's where his value is maximized, right? But McCaffrey could also play receiver if all things, go to hell and he starts to stink and the legs aren't what they used to be and, the injuries pile up. Just put him in the slot and call it a day. Find another running back, Guerendo, Mitchell, Mason, somebody else. So, and look, that's a different conversation for a different day, but all that is to say, there's a lot you can do with McCaffrey that isn't directly tied to running backs, and I think that's what also makes this deal a good deal for San Francisco. And look, anyone saying, I can't believe they paid McCaffrey when they could have paid Aiyuk instead, or they paid McCaffrey first.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end,
what will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
If Brandon Aiyuk has any problem with San Francisco prioritizing their offensive player of the year, then my goodness, my friend, look in the mirror, get a reality check, go touch some grass, and just wait your turn. Now, I don't think Aiyuk is having a problem or does have a problem, but if he does, you got to realize who you are and who you play for. McCaffrey is more important than Debo and Kittle and Aiyuk and darn near 4/5 of the entire offensive line. He's more important than 9/11 of the defense outside of Fred and Nick Bosa. It's Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy on the offense. That's really what it is, right? So, if anyone has a problem with it, I urge you, I beg you, just sit this one out for a second. But let's get to Brandon Aiyuk because it's day one of mandatory minicamp. You gotta be here. Was Brandon Aiyuk in town at Levi Stadium? The answer is simply no. Now, did I expect him to be? No, because Brandon Aiyuk wants to get paid. And yes, Tony, Brandon Aiyuk is likely going to get $20 to $30 million per year. And he also says on Facebook, even today, a receiver accounts for 12% of the salary cap, just like it did in the 1990s, right? So I think people see, the average number, $140 million total, $35 million a year. Oh, it's so much money. And don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But I think because the cap has gone up so much, it just depends on how the money is allotted to. And look, these things come in waves, right? In 10 years' time, running backs will get paid more, receivers will get paid less, and somewhere down the road, tight ends will get paid more. It all fluctuates. It's all liquid. It's all fluid. On the defensive side, no one's paying, number 2 linebackers. No one's paying safeties. As soon as the next flock of big-time safeties comes in, and they're all pros, Kyle Hamilton maybe being the first one of those, they'll start to get paid more, and things will shift again, right? So you're correct that Aiyuk will get paid big money, but he wasn't at camp today, and that has got some people feeling a certain way about it, which I would expect nothing else or different. But like we've talked about, Aiyuk is now subject to fines, and I am someone who says that San Francisco doesn't view Brandon Aiyuk as Nick Bosa. They're not going to waive your fines. They're going to let them pile up, and look, he can make them back in the contract, and that's always the do good, right? Oh, we'll find you now, but make sure you get it back in your bonus, right? So, but he is subject to fines of over $100,000 over the next 3 days. So, in a sense, you miss the next 3 days of camp, you're going to lose over $300,000. Now, I don't know about you, but I couldn't afford to lose that. I'm sure Aiyuk's multi-million-dollar check says he could, but the California taxes may speak differently. But Aiyuk is likely going to get fined. Maybe I'm wrong. I think he gets fined. Just to send a message of look, we like you. We want to pay you. Want you to be here. But plenty of reports, too many to discount this, that San Francisco might be okay with Aiyuk playing on the 5th-year option. Now, I don't think they necessarily want to do that. I think they want Aiyuk to take their deal, which is probably a lowball offer, probably around $26 to $27 million a year, which we'll talk about which deal I think Aiyuk is closer to in regards to his counterparts. But I do think San Francisco's hoping he takes a cheaper deal, get it done, get him in the building, but the fining is simply just to put pressure on him and hope he blinks. Now, will he? I doubt it, but that's the hope, right? Hope he blinks, comes in saying, please, I can't lose any more money, please. But let's be honest here. The agent sits back. He's talking to Debo Samuel, talking to McCaffrey, talking to Kittle. They're giving him advice. They know, don't blink and you'll get paid, right? That's the thing with San Francisco. These things can carry out all the way until the Thursday prior to week number 1. Like Nick Bosa last year. these things can go on forever, which stinks, but that's just the way things go in San Francisco. But then it was weird because Jed York, of all people, tweets this morning, and I'm not sure if it was in response to McCaffrey's signing, but I'll read you the tweet and you can make your own judgment on this. It says, "Do you ever have a premonition that you'll be sending out a tweet later in the day thanking and congratulating someone for a job well done? It's a great feeling." Now, again, the first reaction was, okay, this was in regards to McCaffrey's extension. But what if it's about Brandon Aiyuk's eventual contract extension? So I think it was Jeremy Fowler said there was nothing close in regards to San Francisco and the Aiyuk camp getting a deal done. I have a hard time believing that they've had the entire offseason. I'm sure there's been multiple conversations now. How serious have they been? We don't know. But I would like to think there's a deal much closer than we think. Now, I don't think it'll get done until either late July, early August, simply because they're going to take, after these next 3 days, take a long break, come back for training camp. That gives both parties a chance to reconvene, talk. Usually what happens is the player or the agent is in town. They come for a visit. They talk to John and Kyle and Jed and Parag in person. They sit down, have these heart-to-heart meetings, face-to-face meetings. The agent goes back to Aiyuk or goes back to the player, says, hey, do you want to take the deal? They'll give them the advice. Then the next day, Aiyuk's in town, and they're putting pen to paper. That is basically how all these things go, right? Now, no one's there to see those meetings, but still, it just was like, what is Jed York getting at? Is he getting at Aiyuk? Is he getting at McCaffrey? And again, if Aiyuk is butthurt over McCaffrey getting paid first, if anything, they have done, like you can look at it that way, sure. Oh, I'm the one who's on the last year of his deal, not CMC, sure. But if you look at it from a grand scheme of things, right? You let Armstead go, wait till June 2nd, get the $18 million on the books now. They extend Juwan Jennings, free up more money. Extend McCaffrey, free up more money. You can look at that one of two ways. That yes, San Francisco wants to carry over as much cap as possible. That is true. They want to do that. You can also look at it and say, wow, they freed up $32 million and given themselves enough money to pay me and have much, much more left over. And in that same breath, if they extend Aiyuk, which I think they will, they get to save money on the cap again. So Aiyuk shouldn't look at this as, oh, you paid this guy over me, you prioritize this guy over me, rather than you're freeing up money to pay me. And I think that's what this is, right? Whenever they want to extend a player, Warner, Bosa, Debo, Jimmy Garoppolo, for that matter, they played some hardball. They were unafraid to let things ride out and let you come back to them saying, okay, week 1's in 2 days. You want to get the ball rolling here? Then bing, bang, boom, things happen, things get done. But the question is, what is Brandon Aiyuk's value now? Now, let's be very clear. It is not Justin Jefferson's 4-year, $140 million deal. Ain't no way. Ain't no freaking way. But I do think there was a deal done earlier this offseason that would indicate or kind of give us an idea as to where Aiyuk's value might be. So Jalen Waddle for the Miami Dolphins, he got an extension earlier in the offseason, which has led to Tyreek Hill winning a bigger deal, but that's a different conversation. Jalen Waddle is the 5th highest paid receiver in the NFL, getting $28.25 million annually, with $76 million guaranteed. I think right there, if you gave Brandon Aiyuk $28.5 million, $29 million, he slots right into the top 5 annually, and you give him $80 million guaranteed, he sits right there inside the top 10. Like, that's exactly where he wants to be. And here's the thing, and I do believe that this next part is what might be holding back the negotiations. It's simply the offense you play in. San Francisco just doesn't value I'll rephrase this. San Francisco values receivers, right? Debo, Aiyuk, Pearsall, Cowing, Pettis, Jalen Hurd. They've tried to find all these players. They've drafted and they've put so much money into the receiver room, right? But the way they play doesn't allow receivers to take up the brunt of the offense. It doesn't give their receivers a chance to really put themselves in the category of top 5 simply because it's a run-heavy scheme. Now it's changing over time, especially with Brock Purdy at quarterback. But you can tell that while, yes, the scheme is going through this kind of metamorphosis, it's still Kyle Shanahan's scheme of we're going to run the football 40 times. That's who we are. Now, I think Aiyuk is part of that change. And I think that's why they're willing to pay him. Whereas this was 2-3 years ago, and Jimmy G was the quarterback, and they had Christian McCaffrey, and there was Debo after 2021. I don't think Aiyuk would be here. But this is 2024. And the way they play now with Brock Purdy at quarterback and Christian McCaffrey, the way the offense has kind of evolved over the last few seasons, I think it does allow a player like Aiyuk to stake claim to top 5 money, because in this offense now, while your numbers are not going to equal Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, maybe even Jalen Waddle, I do think it allows you to at least kind of put yourself right, just in that tier of receivers in regards to pay. So I think Aiyuk's deal is going to mirror very closely to Jalen Waddle's $28.25 million per year deal. I think it makes sense. It puts Aiyuk into the top 5 annually, and you give him $80 million guaranteed. How are you not happy? And if you want more than that, well, then we're having a conversation of, are you actually worth that? And now, I love Aiyuk. He single-handedly had one of the greatest catches ever in Niner history against the Lions in the playoffs. It was amazing. It saved that playoff run amongst other plays in that game. But I think for a player, ask for everything you think you're worth. Just don't get butthurt. Like Deebo Samuel said today, it's hard not to take things personally. He's been through that. I'm sure Aiyuk is going through that as well. It's hard not to take the negotiations personally, simply because it is a company telling you how they value you. And I've been in those conversations. I've heard many of, how your boss values you, how my boss values me. And when it's negative or it's not what you think it is, it hurts. It stinks. Your pride gets damaged. Your ego has to get put in check. And for Aiyuk, they're a handful of months into negotiations here. I would like to think, if you're being honest with yourself, Jalen Waddle, eerily similar to Brandon Aiyuk in regards to production, what they do on the field, and how they're viewed in the offense. They are receiver number 2s, technically, with Debo and Hill being the 1s on the teams, but the way they're kind of, they could be 1s on 30 other teams in the NFL. That's how good they are, right? So I think that's kind of where they're going to be at, where it's Jalen Waddle, Brandon Aiyuk, neck and neck of like who's going to get paid that $500,000 more to kind of outdo the other. But right now, there's no pressure. Like, the Niners are just breathing just fine. I don't think they have any worry in the world of getting Aiyuk paid. Unless I'm completely wrong. And he's like, I want $140 million over the next 4 years. And I want $100 million guaranteed. And if that's the case, you can just leave. You're not going to get that. I know people will see the money and they go, oh man, Aiyuk's going to ask for that. No, he's not. No. If you do that, like, if you're in contract negotiations, there's always that fear of asking for too much money. Like, go watch Pawn Stars. The guys come in, what do you want for this, signed football card? I want $100,000. They laugh in your face and go, we'll give you $100. What in reality, it's worth, $50,000 because they want to make profit as well, right? San Francisco wants to make sure they get the bang for their buck, and paying Aiyuk Jefferson money is not going to happen. And Aiyuk also knows that. This is simply how can I weasel my way into the extra $250,000 or $500,000? Same thing of Ricky Pearsall's contract, right? He wants to make sure he can kind of get the guarantees up. He can make sure he gets how the contract's laid out right. Aiyuk is still under contract. Like, he doesn't have to show up, but if he doesn't, go back to the fines, where in the next 3 days, he's going to have $300,000 racking up in fines. And if it comes training camp and they're serious about this thing, it's going to keep going up and up and up and up and up until he eventually does sign, which San Francisco's never feared rubbing a player the wrong way, because they know once you put the helmet on, you'll get over it. Once that first check hits in the bank, you'll get over it. And they know that. And the agent knows that. And the player knows that. Hence why Deebo Samuel today said it's hard not to take things personally. It sucks. It stinks. But like every other player before Aiyuk, they've got it done. And they're going to get this one done too, I believe. And it's so funny because, the longer these things drag out, the longer everyone kind of sits in it and is like, am I overanalyzing everything? There's every little, Instagram, tweet, emoji. What does it mean? And it's like, just sit back and breathe, guys. Like, they just extended McCaffrey and Jennings, and they have over $32 million to spend still. They have plenty of money, and they have plenty of time to get this thing done. They might not. That's always a chance, but they have plenty of time to get Aiyuk's deal done. One deal they did get done here, I think it was yesterday, was the signing of backup tight end Logan Thomas per Mike Garafolo. If you don't know Logan Thomas's story, it's really interesting, right? Came in as a quarterback with the Cardinals, then went to Buffalo, transitioned to tight end, then went to Detroit and found a home with the Commanders the last 4 years. And overall, 8 years in the NFL. Again, the last 4 years with Washington. He had, over the last 4 years, he wasn't a starter until I believe it was 2 years ago, but he caught 184 passes for over 2,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. He isn't really the inline tight end kind of player you want to alleviate Kittle and have Kittle play more outside and in the slot, because Logan Thomas has ran 80% of his routes last year in the slot or lined up out wide, with only 20 on the inline. So he's not going to alleviate Kittle being that, sixth offensive lineman, right? Because Kittle lined up 61.7% in line last year. But what he does is he brings more, not just flexibility, but it also, if Kittle goes down, you're not stuck with Eric Saubert and, Braden Willis and a recovering, essentially a rookie Cam Latu and maybe a Mason Pline. You now have somebody behind Kittle that on a rainy day, he could be a starting tight end. He can give you a touchdown. He can give you 5 catches, 45 yards, 60 yards, and you go, okay, we survived the day without George Kittle. And I think, that what the Niners did in regards to getting Logan Thomas, it simply just makes them more dynamic. Because I was somebody, and I would assume if you listen or watch the show, you would agree that there were a lot of tight ends that were on the board. San Francisco, according to Eric Branch this morning, wanted to draft Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. And the Commanders, ironically, picked him. They wanted that backup tight end. Well, it's not Ben Sinnott, and I would have loved him, but, I think that what they've done is they have bulked up every position. Now, look, Logan Thomas has had a plethora of injuries. Often injured, serious to nagging, they're all there. If Kittle gets hurt, there is no promise Logan Thomas stays healthy. That's just the case. But when healthy, Logan Thomas has been a solid number 2 tight end on a bad team like Washington, a pretty solid tight end number 1, a bottom tier, a starting tight end, mind you. But he's been a valuable starter on really bad offenses. And I think for a team like San Francisco, they're not going to ask him to do too much. He's not going to have to start. And the great thing about this is that when they signed Eric Saubert, right, it was, okay, now you have your blocking tight end, I guess, is your tight end number 3. You have essentially replaced Ross Dwelley or Charlie Warner, although Warner is much better than Saubert ever has been. But now you bring in Logan Thomas, and last year, Logan Thomas had a 60.2 run blocking grade. Saubert, 63.6, right? Saubert, in general, a better run blocking tight end. But here's the kicker. On zone plays, which is basically all of San Francisco's offense, Kittle, 76.2. That ranked 5th amongst run blocking for tight ends last year. Logan Thomas, 74.8. That ranked 8th. Eric Saubert, 69.6. That ranked 14th. San Francisco now has 3 of the top 15 blocking tight ends on zone plays. Yes, the passing offense with Thomas has gotten more explosive. You have a ton of guys that can play quarterback now. As Rob D points out, Debo can pass, CMC can pass, Juwan Jennings played quarterback, Juice is the emergency fullback quarterback, now Logan Thomas can all pass. Sure, that may be the cherry on top of the cake. I'm sure they're not going to utilize that too much, but it's Kyle Shanahan. You never know. Every year he pulls something out of his butt, and you're like, where did they get that at? Wow. I mean, he had Emmanuel Sanders throwing passes in 2019 after, 2 weeks on the team? And so you never know. All it does is it bulks up a position that had no depth. And that was one of the biggest complaints coming out of the draft. Okay, you got 2 offensive linemen. You got 2 receivers. You got a cornerback. You got a linebacker, right? You got a running back. You added bulk and you added some starters. Cool. What about tight end? It's Kittle and nobody else. Adding Logan Thomas is not going to make or break their season. What it does is, though, it gives them flexibility where, because this team is so darn physical, the way they play is so physical that if someone goes down, whether it be Kittle or somebody else, they do have insulation. Quarterback, they have Dobbs, they have Allen. Running back, they have Mitchell, Grendo, and Mason. A tight end, it's now Thomas and Saubert and Latu and Willis and Mason Pline, which we'll see how many of those younger guys play out during training camp and preseason. At receiver, you now have Pearsall and Cowing and Jennings and plenty of other guys behind them. Chris Conley, veterans that can come in and fill in, right? So what they've done is, yes, they've built for now. Like the Logan Thomas deal is a 1-year deal. Maximize this year alone and just pray to God no one gets hurt. And if they do, Logan Thomas is right there, ready to go. And the great thing is that Logan Thomas, what he brings to the tight end room is something that, I don't want to say, I was just going to say this on here. It's Khalil Young. I don't know much about Logan Thomas, but from what I've seen, reminds me of Jordan Reed. I wasn't going to go the Jordan Reed route. I think Jordan Reed was an excellent receiver Logan Thomas isn't quite the athlete. That said, I do think what Logan Thomas does is probably give San Francisco their best, number 2 tight end pass catching option besides Jordan Reed. Like, over Kyle Shanahan's tenure in San Francisco, I can think of, you have Ross Dwelly, you had Charlie Warner, you had Levi Toilolo, you had Jordan Reed, and then last year, same guys. Then you have Braden Willis and Cam Latu, and there hasn't been much, and there hasn't been much production from the backup tight ends. Ross Dwelly probably having the biggest impact on a one-game basis, being that game against the Cardinals at Levi Stadium in 2019. But Logan Thomas can actually give you 6 touchdowns a year if he has to, which as a backup tight end, I think one thing San Francisco really hasn't been able to do successfully, which it's obviously a choice, and they utilize Kyle Juszczyk as kind of the backup tight end a lot in many of their plays, but you don't have to have Juice out there sometimes now. You can actually have Logan Thomas and Kittle go downfield and do some work. Now, again, Thomas is not Jordan Reed, and that was the hope with Reed, right? You have Kittle and Reed healthy, and it's funny, every time they lose a Super Bowl, they go sign the often injured backup Commanders at the time Redskin tight end with Reed and now Thomas. So maybe it's just a coincidence, but I do find it pretty funny. But other than that, it's hard not to like the move. You don't lose anybody of value doing it. You don't trade draft picks. I'm assuming the deal's for like $2, $3, at the most $5 million. And you still got 32 on the books. Then you pay Aiyuk, and sure, it's all easier said than done. But if I told you at the beginning of free agency, post draft, that they were going to have Kittle, Logan Thomas, Eric Saubert, and Willis, and Cam Latu, and some younger guys behind them, I think we would all say, okay, that's a fairly nice tight end room. Of course, there's a high potential in Kittle and all Pro Bowler, but okay, you have the solid vet behind Kittle, and you have a bunch of youth behind those two guys. What's not to like? So, things happen, guys get hurt, this, that, and the other. But I think Logan Thomas, I think he just gives exactly what you needed. A veteran tight end number 2 that can come in and can actually play. Braden Willis, I like the kid. I want him to be good. Unproven. Cam Latu can't even practice or hasn't even practiced. And when he did practice, it wasn't good. And Eric Saubert's a journeyman. Now you have a solid NFL backup tight end where on a bad team, he would start. He also gives you a red zone threat. Throw post routes. Throw back of the end zone post routes with Kittle and Thomas. Let them outmatch linebackers and safeties. You have these 2 massive humans. Utilize them, Kyle. Please. You have more red zone threats now. And I think that's the one thing with San Francisco last year is when they got to the red zone, they were unbeatable. You're now not just giving yourself a better chance to get to the red zone, but man, you now have a chance to score in the red zone even higher. And Spy Nick Danger says here, is it just me, or do the Niners seem to have the potential to be even more explosive on offense and deeper and more stout on defense? So I said last year that San Francisco's offense was going to be the reason why they won over their defense. Now, that changed on a game-to-game basis, but I do think that for the most part last season, their offense was the identity of the entire team. When the offense went, the defense went. Now, there were times that wasn't true, but overall, I think we can all agree the offense outplayed the defense last year. Yes, the offense has the potential to be more explosive. Ricky Pearsall, Cowing, Grendo, Dominic Pooney, now Logan Thomas. You have more oomph behind your punches now. And that doesn't even include McCaffrey and Debo and Aiyuk and Purdy and Trent Williams and those guys. And on defense, you've added Renardo Green, Isaac Yiadom. You've brought in Malik Mustafa and Tatum Bethune and Devondre Campbell and Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos and Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott and Evan Anderson and others. Like, you've insulated, but you've also, like, the run defense should be better, head and shoulders ahead of what it was last year. Even Javon Hargrave even said, I got to get in better shape. It's like, I think the Niners last year, for as far as they went, I think they took the run defense playing poorly to heart. And I think they took it personally, as they should have. It sucked for about 4 or 5 weeks last year to end the year. It was horrible. And I think they realized that, hey, if it wasn't for the football gods raining down on us at Levi's against the Lions in Green Bay, we would have never been playing the Chiefs. I think they took that season or last year not as, oh, we lost in the last game of the season, how much better do we have to get? No, they took it as, we shouldn't have even been playing in the NFC title game. We have to get better now. And I think San Francisco took it to heart, whether it be, the front office and the moves they've made, the returning players, the guys they've added. I think San Francisco, the record may not be as good as it was last year because the opponents are getting better around them, but I do think overall, I think San Francisco was, as they should be, and this is no breaking news here, they're building themselves up for 1 to 2 final runs at this thing before they have to pay Brock Purdy, and mainstay cornerstone players are going to be gone. That's what last year was kind of building towards, and you have to get it done. But man, like, I think I said in my preseason or schedule release prediction was like 11 wins, 12 wins. And that's not horrible. It's not what it was last year, obviously, but I think you win the division, you finish as a 2, 3, 4 seed, you host a playoff game. I mean, man. It's like, ooh, like this Niners team. I know it's hard to kind of get excited again because of what happened last year, but week 1's really close. And I think we are going to be, in a weird way, pleasantly surprised in regards to how good the defense is. And, this offense can hang with anybody. But last year, when I watched the team in training camp and OTAs, I said, this team could average 35 points a game. And I was called nuts. Now, they didn't do that. But Purdy was almost the MVP. McCaffrey won the Offensive Player of the Year. Aiyuk had a career year. Debo, through a second-half stint, was 2021 Debo all over again. And overall, this team was the number 1 seed for, the better half of the year, right? I'm not going to go as far as say 35 points a game again because we haven't even seen the team play together, but, why not 33? This team averaged, 31 last year? This team has gotten better offensively. Now, guys have to play and play well, but I think overall, this team, on the back of it, or piggybacking off of the McCaffrey extension and the Juwan Jennings extension and all that conversation, like this team, the way they're built is just built to last, 22 games a year, but also kick your ass in the process. Like, that's just how good they are. So, there really isn't much more to say. Khalil Young asked me a question here, and we'll get to for our last comment of the day, is that what do you think Pearsall's role will be? Will he split time with Jennings? They play 2 very different positions. Yes, they're both slot receivers mainly. Juwan Jennings, like Kyle Juszczyk, is also that tight end number 2. That's one of the reasons why they really haven't valued signing a backup tight end. Now, I think that's foolish, but Juwan Jennings is kind of that, kind of the backup tight end to George Kittle in a lot of ways. And so, I think on running downs, unless they're going 4 wide, You're going to see a lot of Jawan Jennings, third and shorts. You're going to see Jawan Jennings out there. I also think we might see an increased role for Jawan Jennings this year. You're paying him, a larger contract. And I think the way he played to end last year, regular season and playoffs, I think he just earned playing time. And, not to say that they're kind of eyeing a future without Debo or Aiyuk, but I think, Pearsall is someone that I kind of pointed to after the draft and said, hey, if Debo is gone next year, it's probably going to be Pearsall and Aiyuk starting. So I think that's, Pearsall kind of being the backup for Aiyuk, kind of being the prototypical, backup to Aiyuk makes a lot of sense to me. But also, I want to see this team go 4 or 5 wide because they can. You cannot ask any defense in football to stop an offense that has Debo, Aiyuk, Pearsall, Kittle, McCaffrey, Jawan Jennings, and Brock Purdy on the field at the exact same time. Someone's going to be open. I don't care who it is. Someone's going to be open. So I don't think they'll split time. I think Jawan Jennings is kind of firmly that receiver 3, tight end 2 right now. And look, I'm not someone, and it's so early, right? I don't think Jacob Cowing is going to I don't think Cowing's role is going to be as a receiver in year 1, unless there's an emergency. Now, I like Cowing, but I think kick return for him makes a lot of sense. I know in the practices so far, it's been Cowing and Gray and Pearsall and Garendo doing punts and kick returns, so we will see. But I think Pearsall will be the receiver 4 walking into the year. And look, they'll mix and match. I think Jawan Jennings, the reason why he plays so much, and it's a great thing to have, is his physical stature just dominates any nickelback, any safety. He's 6'3", 200 plus pounds. No nickelback is that size. And, on the off chance you're playing a team like the Ravens, which they don't this year, you don't have to play Kyle Hamilton. A team like Philadelphia that now has, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back and the kid they just drafted from Iowa, Cooper DeJean, that may give them fits. But again, then you line up 4 or 5 wide and say, let's go at it, boys. So I wouldn't say, though, Pearsall's role will be receiver 4. And I think he'll be the primary backup if Aiyuk goes down, simply because, no one can do Debo's role. Right, that's Debo. That's who he is. I think Jawan is more likely, if it needed to be, or if he had to kind of take on Debo's role as a physically dominating receiver. But Pearsall's just not that guy. He's not that guy, pal. Trust me. So I wouldn't. Shanahan's going to have so many cards up his sleeve this year and what he can do. I'm hoping that, my dream is that we see all 4 or 5 of those guys on the field at the exact same time. And Leon Sandcastle, great, always a great name. Exactly what I've been saying since day 1. Kyle's going to try to use Jacob Cowing in the cheat. I think you mean cheetah play that Miami uses. Basically, Cowing is arguably the perfect receiver for a Dolphin scheme. He works perfectly when you can designate and create free releases for him at the line of scrimmage. And when you can do that, he's so freaking fast, no one can catch him. And he's so tough to bring down, hence why I think that, well, yes, there's going to be some gadget plays for Cowing in the playbook somewhere, but I also think that for Cowing as well, that's why his skill set fits that kick return, punt return role to a T. Can you be Ray McLeod with the actual ability to separate and get kick return and punt return yards? McLeod wasn't fast enough to separate from defenders. Cowing, 4-3 certainly is. So time will tell, obviously, but I really do like what San Francisco is building. It's smart to lock up Juwan Jennings. It's extremely smart to lock up Christian McCaffrey, the Offensive Player of the Year. If you let him go, your entire offense changes. We've seen the impact he has. Good on San Francisco getting it done. And in regards to Logan Thomas, good deal. He needed to have somebody else in that room. And Brandon Aiyuk, sit back, relax, enjoy the fines you're going to rack up because you're not showing up to practice the next few days. But also know that they're going to pay you. They're going to pay you. Just wait your turn. You're on deck, brother. You are on deck, ready to go. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you so much for the comments in the last video. And thank you so much for the kind words in regards to my wedding that happened last Friday. I got hitched. We got hitched, folks. We're now married, and it's great. Love it so much. But again, thank you guys so much for liking, sharing, subscribing. Follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. MLB, NBA playoffs. The finals are here. You want to go to a game? Save yourself $20 off. And when the NFL season comes around, use that promo code and get yourself cheaper tickets off Niner tickets, off of whatever team you like, preseason, regular season, hopefully an eventual playoff run. Use that promo code and save yourself $20 off. It'll buy you one beer at Levi's. Beer is like $18. You want a drink? Use the promo code and use the extra money you save towards a giant beer on me at Levi's Stadium this year. Anyways, that's all I got for you. My name is Sterling Bennett, and until next time, stay faithful.